How do you deal with large or complex items in a backlog? Well, we need to say they're completely different things. Just because it's big doesn't make it complex, and just because it's complex doesn't make it big. Complex means that you've got lots of interdependent, interrelated parts to it. Okay, you can't build it without all of these things together. All right, and that can be a real challenge. Okay? Thankfully, they're not normally sprint-bustingly large, the complex. They're just hard work. And what you're likely going to need to do is understand how to do each part of it and how they all link together. Why is it such a tangled web? And the way that I would tackle those is very often through research, through what is known from the extreme programming world as a spike. Okay, the idea is a restaurant spike. What you're doing is you are creating a very, very thin piece of functionality to production quality, full professional standards are still at play, to understand. You're not intending that this is the final version. You may be trying 3 or 4 different technologies out. Which one gives us the best way of answering this need, of meeting the requirement? And that is often the best way to deal with complexity. Okay, you can't break it down any further. You're there and it's still too big and it's unknown. Okay, such is life. What you're going to do is fire some research tasks through it to understand it better. Is there any way, because maybe there is a way of breaking it down further, or breaking a bit off, or producing it in a simpler way, achieving the same outcomes. Okay? I'm not going to promise you it's easy. It rarely is, because when you're there and you're looking at it, it's a big thorny issue, and it's kind of scary. I've had those when I was a developer where you don't know. You just don't know. And the best answer to I don't know is saying that out loud. I don't know. I don't know how we're going to do it. We need to invest some time in learning. We need to understand whether this technology can solve that problem, or of these 3 options we have on the table that all seem great, which one's the right way for us in this context. Complexity, your best answer is often a bit of research, focused, time-bound, towards how do we solve that problem. Gain more understanding, gain more clarity within the team. You're not going to make it any less complex. However, you're going to have a better understanding and be able to move through the work with more confidence. And let's be honest, as you go, you're going to continue to learn, and hopefully you can get something that fits within a sprint. Now, that's a very different approach to it's big. Okay, it's big means it's going to take a lot of effort to deliver. And it doesn't have anything to do with complexity. They may be related, and then you've got a real headache on your hands, and maybe we pick that up at a later date. But when it's just big, break it down. Okay? Go back to that customer, and or at least sit in their seat and think, what am I trying to do here? What am I trying to achieve? And break the work down into slivers of functionality, of value. Okay? Many people go, but they don't want that. They want all of it. Okay, but that means they do want that thin slice. Because if they didn't want it, we wouldn't build it, and then that's a little bit of work we don't need to do. And we keep doing that, and suddenly we're not doing anything, and we've definitely not done what they wanted. So they do want it. Very often, these big chunky items do not exist because technically we can't break them down further, but politically we don't want to. Maybe there's a senior sponsor who's saying, I have to have all of it. Or your product owner is still learning the ropes and hasn't learned about pushing back. Or as developers and the Scrum team at large, you haven't yet learned how to break items down. Okay? But most things are reducible into smaller fragments. We can look at it. Calculators, it's one of the things, bane of my life, is when, we've got this really complicated calculator. Awesome. What's the first function? 1 plus 1. Just build something that passes that. But we'll never use 1 plus 1. But you need the foundations and build them in. How do we do addition? How do we do subtraction? How do we do multiplication? I've done this with incredibly complicated calculators that have built up step by step, each piece building on the next, so that we have a complete system, the thing that the sponsor couldn't live without. But every step of the way, as a team, we knew it worked. We knew it was all valuable. Okay? And we knew we could continue developing it as the needs shifted and changed. Okay? And it will fit in a sprint. This huge thing, one of the calculators had somewhere in the region of 40 inputs and something like 27 outputs, and lots of interplay between them. And we just said, what's the simplest thing it does? And went through the system and solved just that. Item number 1, just that. Oh, it doesn't do all these things. No, but it does this one. And then it does this one. And then it does this one. And good old Pareto does tend to kick in here, this 80-20 rule. 80% of the work is going to be done by 20% of the effort inside that big ticket. Okay? So what's really interesting is very often when you've broken the back of all the work, the stakeholders don't care about the rest of it. They're like, yeah, well, it'd be good, but we can live without it. Awesome. That's amazing, because now we can work on the next most important thing that is no longer that big chunky item. Okay? So big and complex, you want to be using both. You want to be thinking, okay, it's a lot of effort to deliver this and it's very intertwined. How do we decouple it? How do we tease apart those strands to still be delivering value? Always be thinking, how do we deliver customer value? Okay? And breaking those things down into smaller pieces. There is going to hit a point where you can't break it down further or it's not sensible. Great, you found your limit. Okay? But always come from what does the customer need. And they need each part of it, even if it's incredibly simple. One of the simplest things I had as a developer was a simple call and response. All we could do was send a message from one system to the parent and get an answer back. That was it, 200 response. And the stakeholders who looked at it, so what? That's not impressive. Until we explained it went through 23 separate systems to get to that parent system and back. And that's all we achieved in 2 weeks. There was nothing else to show. We had managed to jump between all these systems, through all the authentication, had things set up. You know, good old user accounts not set up. We tracked it all down and we could talk to it. And when somebody asked us, yeah, but when am I going to use that? It was actually quite easy to explain every single day, because everything requires us talking to that system at the other end. And if we can't do that, there's nothing else worth doing. If you've got to this point in the video, I hope you've enjoyed it. If so, a like would be appreciated. If you want to hear more from me, more answers to questions that maybe you've got in the Agile world, please subscribe to the channel. And if you've got a question that you really want answered, drop it in the comments. I promise we'll get around to it. Thank you.